Caroline walked through the front door of her house. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filling the air. The warmth of the kitchen wrapped around her like a hug as she set down the last bag of groceries. She had planned everything perfectly. Thanksgiving would be special this year. She glanced at the beautifully set table. The golden turkey resting in the center. The mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce arranged neatly. The flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on the walls, making the room feel cozy, inviting. It was supposed to be a night of togetherness. She checked her phone. 5:30 p.m. No messages. Mom had promised to be there. Judith always promised. Ashley, her younger sister, had been oddly quiet too. That was never a good sign. Caroline sighed, pouring herself a glass of wine. Patience. She needed to be patient. But as the minutes stretched into hours, the doubt started to creep in. 6:30 p.m. She tried calling. No answer. 7 p.m. The turkey was getting cold. The mashed potatoes had lost their warmth. She dialed again, gripping the phone tighter this time. Voicemail. Her stomach twisted into a tight knot. They wouldn't do this to me. Not today. Then, a knock at the door. Caroline rushed forward, her breath catching in relief. They had finally arrived. But when she opened the door, no one was there. Instead, an envelope lay on the doorstep. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she bent down, her hands shaking as she unfolded the letter. It was her mother's handwriting. We went to the Grand. Enjoy your dinner alone. The words were cold, unfeeling. She read them again, and again. No, they wouldn't. They couldn't. The paper trembled in her grip as her vision blurred. The candles flickered behind her, casting a haunting glow over the untouched meal. The air felt too thick, suffocating. Her hands clenched into fists. And then, laughter. It was faint at first, muffled. Then, a whisper, a stifled giggle. Caroline's blood ran cold. And then, the closet door burst open. Ashley jumped out, phone in hand, laughing hysterically. Oh my God, she actually believed it. Ashley shrieked, doubling over with laughter. Caroline froze, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Judith followed, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. Carol, sweetheart, you should have seen your face. Her mother gasped between laughs. Ashley pointed the phone at her. Hey guys, welcome to my Thanksgiving prank special. Today, we tricked my sister into thinking we abandoned her. The red blinking light burned into Caroline's eyes. She was live streaming this. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of people were watching. Watching her stand there, frozen in shock, humiliated. Ashley flipped the camera back to herself, her perfect influencer smile in place. Drop a comment below if you think she's gonna cry. Caroline's hands shook. Her mother, her own mother, was laughing at her. They had set this up. Together. Everything, the broken promises, the ignored calls, the letter, it had all been for a joke. Something inside Caroline snapped. She lifted the letter, staring at it. Then, without a word, she ripped it in half. The sound echoed through the silent room. Ashley gasped. What the hell? That was part of my footage. Caroline turned to her, eyes cold, unforgiving. Did you ever stop to think about how I would feel? She asked. Her voice low, steady, dangerous. Ashley scoffed. Oh my God, Carol, don't be so dramatic. It's just a prank. Caroline let out a slow, bitter laugh. A prank, she repeated. Ashley grinned, flipping the camera back toward her. You're just mad because you fell for it. Caroline lunged forward. In one swift motion, she grabbed the phone out of Ashley's hand and threw it against the wall. Ashley screamed. Judith gasped, taking a step back. You broke my phone. Ashley screeched. Caroline stepped closer, her voice a whisper. Do you think this is funny? She hissed. Ashley's mouth opened, but no words came out. The camera was off. The show was over. Judith reached for her, but Caroline jerked away. Carol, sweetheart, we were gonna eat together after. After what? After making a fool out of me? After humiliating me in front of your thousands of followers? Her voice rose, years of frustration and pain boiling over. Judith flinched. Caroline took a deep breath, turning toward the door. Where are you going? Ashley demanded, voice still shrill with anger. Caroline grabbed her coat. Anywhere but here. She yanked the door open, stepping into the cold November night. Carol, wait. Judith rushed after her. Come back. The food's still here. Ashley scoffed. You're seriously leaving? Over a joke? Caroline turned. A joke? She said softly. Then, she laughed. Not the kind of laugh her mother and sister had shared at her expense. No. This was different. Colder. Stronger. You made your choice, she said simply. And now, I'm making mine. And with that, she walked away. For the first time in years, she felt free. Caroline walked blindly through the empty streets, the bitter November wind biting at her skin. Her breath formed wispy clouds in the darkness, but she barely felt the cold. Her mind was spinning, replaying the moment over and over again. The laughter, the cameras, the letter on the doorstep. The food she had spent days preparing sat untouched on the dining table. And they had laughed. She clenched her fists, shoving them deeper into her coat pockets as she marched forward. Where was she going? She had no idea. Anywhere but home. She could still hear Ashley's voice echoing in her head. Oh my God. Carol, don't be so dramatic. It's just a prank. A prank. That's all it was to them. The betrayal cut deeper than she had expected. She had known, deep down, that she had always been second to Ashley, the afterthought, the backup plan. But tonight? Tonight was something else entirely. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, dragging her out of her thoughts. She glanced down. 12 missed calls. Mom, Ashley, even her stepfather, Walter, had tried reaching her. Caroline inhaled sharply, her thumb hovering over the screen. Should she answer? No. She hit ignore and kept walking. Then, another buzz. A message. She glanced at the screen, expecting another guilt trip from Judith or a sarcastic remark from Ashley. But instead, her eyes widened. Christine. Hey, we're having a little Thanksgiving get-together tonight. Hope you're having fun with family. But if you're free, come by. We'd love to see you. She stopped in her tracks, the message glowing against the dark night. Christine. An old friend from college. They had kept in touch over the years, mostly through social media, but Caroline had turned down the invitation earlier that week. I'll be with my family. How ironic. Her fingers hesitated over the screen. Would it be weird to show up unannounced? This late? Would they even still be there? Before she could overthink it, she typed out a reply. Caroline, is the offer still open? The response came almost instantly. Christine, yes, come over. We have so much food left. Are you okay? For the first time that night, Caroline smiled. Christine's apartment was a 20-minute walk, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where the glow of holiday lights softened the cold edges of the night. As she approached the building, she could already hear the laughter spilling out onto the street. Caroline hesitated at the entrance. What if she didn't belong here? What if showing up like this made her look pathetic? But before she could talk herself out of it, the front door burst open. Carol. Christine stood there, grinning widely, her arms open in welcome. You actually came. Caroline let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Yeah, she said, stepping inside. The warmth hit her immediately, wrapping around her like a much-needed embrace. The apartment was filled with people, some familiar faces from college, some new. A cozy fire crackled in the corner, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted turkey filled the air. Christine led her straight to the dining room, where a massive spread of food still covered the table. Eat, she said firmly, pressing a plate into Caroline's hands. You look like you need it. And for the first time that day, Caroline actually felt hungry. She took a seat, listening as the conversation swirled around her. It was easy here, light. There was no pressure to perform. No one recording her every move. No cruel laughter at her expense. Just friends, warmth, belonging. At some point, a man slid into the seat across from her, flashing a friendly smile. You must be Carol, he said. Christine's told me about you. She blinked. Oh? He extended a hand. James, I made the turkey, and the mashed potatoes, and, well, most of this. Actually. Her eyebrows lifted. You cooked all this? He shrugged, a proud glint in his eyes. I'm a chef. It's kind of my thing. Caroline picked up her fork, taking a bite of the turkey. Her eyes widened. Okay, wow, that's really good. James grinned. I'd hope so. Otherwise, I should probably quit now. She laughed, actually laughed, for the first time all night. And just like that, the weight on her chest started to lift. For the first time in years, she realized family wasn't just blood. Family was this: warmth, laughter, a place where she belonged. She didn't need her mother's approval. She didn't need to be the afterthought at Judith's table. Because, sitting here, surrounded by people who actually cared, Caroline realized something. She was finally home. 3 days had passed since Thanksgiving. 3 days of silence, a silence Caroline had never experienced before. Normally, after any disagreement, her mother would bombard her phone with calls, guilt-laden texts, and lengthy voicemails filled with passive-aggressive remarks. But this time, nothing. That should have brought her peace. It didn't. Instead, it left her uneasy, like the calm before a storm. And then, the knock came. It was late. Too late for visitors. Caroline had been curled up on her couch, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, trying to enjoy the simple pleasure of an evening without family drama. But the second she heard that knock, her entire body went rigid. Her fingers clenched around her mug. She knew exactly who it was. Slowly, she placed the mug on the table and rose to her feet. Her heart thudding dully in her chest. She moved toward the door, but didn't open it right away. Instead, she pressed her palm against the wood, as if trying to brace herself. Another knock, louder this time. A voice. Caroline, please. Her mother, Judith. Caroline inhaled sharply through her nose, forcing herself to stay calm. Don't let her in. She could just ignore it. Pretend she wasn't home. But before she could decide, another voice joined in. Carol, please open up. Her stepfather, Walter. Her jaw tightened. Of course. He was here too. The one who always played mediator. Who never truly took sides but also never defended her when she needed him most. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked the door, but only cracked it open. Just enough to see their faces. Just enough to let them know she was listening. But not enough to invite them in. And there they stood. Judith, bundled up in a thick coat. Her face a perfect mask of motherly sorrow. Walter, standing slightly behind her, looking exhausted, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Caroline crossed her arms over her chest, leaning against the doorframe. What do you want? She asked flatly. Judith's lip trembled, but Caroline had seen this performance before. The sad eyes, the soft voice, the calculated fragility designed to tug at her heartstrings. We need to talk, Judith murmured, voice shaking just enough to sound believable. Caroline didn't move. Talk about what? How you turned my Thanksgiving into a joke. How you made me the punchline of a public humiliation stunt for Ashley's channel. Judith flinched. Walter sighed. Carol, he started, voice tired. But Caroline wasn't done. You lied to me, Mom. Her voice trembled, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from rage. You let me think I was planning a dinner for my family. Only for you to turn it into a joke. And then you had the audacity to film it. To broadcast my humiliation for thousands of strangers to laugh at. Judith reached out, but Caroline stepped back, grip tightening on the door. Sweetheart, it was just a prank. She pleaded. Ashley said. Caroline laughed bitterly. Ashley said? Right. Because Ashley is the only person who matters to you. Judith's face fell. That's not true. Caroline's stomach twisted. Then prove it. Silence. Judith opened her mouth, then closed it. Walter looked down at the ground. Neither had an answer. That was all Caroline needed to know. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You know, for years, I tried to convince myself that you loved me just as much as you loved Ashley. That maybe I was just imagining things. But I wasn't, was I? She let out a bitter chuckle. You abandoned me that night. You let me sit there, waiting, believing you were coming, only to laugh at me from the closet. Judith's face twisted in something resembling guilt. We didn't mean, but you did. Caroline cut in. You did mean to hurt me. Maybe you didn't think it would be this bad. But you knew it would hurt. And you still did it. And why? Judith didn't answer. Caroline swallowed hard. Because Ashley wanted you to. Because her Instagram followers, her sponsorships, her little social media empire mattered more than I did. Judith's lips trembled. That's not true, she whispered. Caroline tilted her head, studying her mother's face. Isn't it? Silence stretched between them. Then, Judith's expression hardened. Fine, she said, voice clipped. If you're going to act like this, if you're going to hold a grudge over a joke, then maybe we did make the right choice that night. Caroline's blood ran cold. Walter muttered, Judith, but she ignored him. You always took things too seriously. Carol, she continued, voice sharp now, always so dramatic. It was a joke, and you're throwing a tantrum over it. You're acting like a child. Caroline let out a slow breath. There it was. The mask was gone. The regret, the sorrow, all fake. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to make sure she didn't cut them off. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry they were facing the consequences. Caroline took a step back. Goodbye, Mom. Judith's eyes widened. Carol. Slam. She shut the door in their faces. And this time, she didn't feel guilty. For the first time in years. Caroline was done. The morning after Caroline slammed the door in her mother's face, she woke up to a flood of missed calls and unread messages. Mom, 20 missed calls. Ashley, 15 missed calls. Walter, 5 missed calls. 1 voicemail. She stared at the glowing screen, her heart pounding in her chest. It would be so easy to unblock them, to listen, to read, to let herself be pulled back into the chaos she had just escaped. Don't. With a deep breath, Caroline deleted everything without reading a single word. It was done. But the storm wasn't over yet. Later that afternoon, as Caroline sipped her coffee and tried to enjoy the peace she had reclaimed, her phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a message from a coworker. Martha, are you okay? I saw the post. Call me if you need to talk. Caroline's stomach dropped. What post? A sinking feeling settled in her chest as she opened Facebook. And there it was. A long, dramatic post from Judith West, her mother. It breaks my heart when your own child turns against you. After everything I've done for Caroline, she has decided to cut me out of her life over something so trivial. I raised her. I sacrificed for her. And yet she has chosen cruelty. I never thought my daughter would be so cold and ungrateful. I am devastated beyond words. I pray that one day she will realize the pain she has caused me. Caroline's breath caught in her throat. The comments were pouring in. Caroline did what? Wow, I can't believe she'd do this to you. Judith, you're such a good mother. Some kids just don't appreciate their parents anymore. She'll regret it one day. Her hands shook with rage. Her mother had done exactly what Caroline expected, painted herself as the victim, twisting the truth so that the world would see Caroline as the villain. But what stunned her the most, Ashley had commented too. I tried to warn her. Mom, you know how she is. She just doesn't understand family. A slow, bitter laugh bubbled up from Caroline's throat. Ashley, of course. It wasn't enough that they had humiliated her on Thanksgiving. Now they wanted to destroy her reputation too. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. She wouldn't fight back. She wouldn't stoop to their level. But then, another message came in. Emily, old college friend, hey. Just saw your mom's post. I don't know what's going on. But I have a feeling she's not telling the whole story. If you want to talk, I'm here. Something shifted inside Caroline. Emily didn't believe the lies. And if Emily didn't, maybe others wouldn't either. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, with a slow exhale, she started to type. I wasn't going to say anything. But I won't let lies spread about me. Here's the truth. Caroline laid everything out. How she had spent weeks preparing Thanksgiving dinner. How she had been excited for the first real family gathering in years. How she had waited, alone, while her mother and sister hid in a closet, filming her for social media entertainment. They didn't just abandon me. They humiliated me. They let thousands of strangers laugh at my pain. And they called it a joke. Now they want sympathy because I refused to let them keep using me. I'm done. She hit post. And then, she waited. It didn't take long. Within minutes, the tide turned. People who had blindly supported Judith began asking questions. Wait, she filmed you as a prank? That's so messed up. Why didn't she mention that part in her post? And then, screenshots surfaced. A follower of Ashley's had saved the video. The humiliation, the laughter, the way Ashley gleefully mocked her own sister in real time. People were furious. This is disgusting. I can't believe a mother would do this to her child. Ashley, you're an influencer? Not anymore. And just like that, Ashley lost control of the narrative. Her followers started unfollowing. Her sponsors started pulling out. And her carefully curated image started crumbling. Then came the desperate messages. First from Ashley. Carol, I didn't mean for it to go this far. We need to talk. Please answer. Then from Judith. Sweetheart, we can fix this. Don't ruin our family over a misunderstanding. And finally, from Walter. I told them this was a mistake. I tried to stop it. Please, let's just talk. Caroline stared at the screen. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry they got caught. She took a deep breath and deleted every message. Then, for the first time in her life, she blocked them all. Days passed. Then weeks. And Caroline realized something. She didn't miss them. She didn't miss the constant guilt. The manipulation. The obligation to always be the good daughter. She had friends who truly cared. She had colleagues who respected her. She had peace. And for the first time in years, she was truly thankful. Sitting at her own table. A plate of food in front of her. She whispered to herself. This year, I finally understand the meaning of Thanksgiving. And she smiled. Because she was finally free. A month had passed since Caroline walked out of her mother's house that fateful Thanksgiving night. She had blocked their numbers. Cut ties. And for the first time in her life, she had felt free. But peace never lasts when dealing with people like Judith and Ashley. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a certified letter. It arrived on a cold Monday morning, resting ominously in her mailbox. Caroline frowned as she held it, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the sender's name. Judith West. Her mother. The same mother who had humiliated her for views. The same mother who had ignored her pain. The same mother who had let Ashley turn their family into a joke. Her heart pounded as she ripped the envelope open, scanning the neatly typed words. And then, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a plea to reconcile. It was a demand. Judith was demanding financial support. Caroline, as your mother, I am deeply hurt by your recent actions. However, that does not change the fact that family takes care of family. Since you have decided to distance yourself, you must understand that Walter and I are struggling. We are behind on bills. And Walter's health is not what it used to be. As the successful daughter, it is your responsibility to contribute. Please send $2 by the end of the month. Caroline stared at the letter in stunned silence. It was as if nothing had changed. She had walked away. She had cut them off. And yet, here was her mother, still expecting her to be their personal ATM. Her hands clenched into fists. The letter crumpling between her fingers. Not this time. She pulled out her phone and, against her better judgment, unblocked Judith's number. The call barely rang once before her mother picked up. Caroline, oh, sweetheart, I knew you would come around. What the hell is this? Caroline interrupted, her voice shaking with fury. A beat of silence. Sweetheart, I don't understand. The letter. Mom, the letter where you demand money from me like I'm some kind of bank? Are you serious? A pause. Then, Judith sighed. Caroline, you don't understand how hard things have been for us. We're behind on bills. And with Walter's condition. Walter is fine. Caroline snapped. And even if he wasn't, that is not my problem. I am not your bank. I am not your safety net. You made that very clear when you laughed in my face on Thanksgiving night. Judith's tone shifted, from sugary sweet to ice cold. You ungrateful child, she spat. After everything I've done for you. After all the years I raised you, fed you, gave you a home, and now, when I need you the most, you turn your back on me? Caroline laughed bitterly. I turned my back on you? No, Mom. You turned your back on me when you decided that humiliating me online was more important than respecting me as your daughter. You turned your back on me when you let Ashley turn our family into a circus for likes and comments. And now that you're facing the consequences, you suddenly remember I exist? Give me a break. Judith's voice wavered. Please, sweetheart, just this once. We really need it. No, Caroline said firmly. For the first time, she heard true panic in her mother's voice. Caroline, you don't mean that. This is your family. I meant every damn word. And then, Caroline hung up. 3 days later, the second letter arrived. This time, it wasn't a demand. It was a threat. Since you refuse to be reasonable, you leave us with no choice. If you do not contribute financially, we will be forced to take legal action to claim what is rightfully ours. You have an obligation as our daughter. Caroline's blood ran cold. She read the letter 3 times, each word sinking in like a knife to the chest. Her own mother was threatening to sue her. For what? For daring to live her own life? For refusing to be manipulated? She had to put an end to this. She called a lawyer the very next day. You have nothing to worry about, the lawyer assured her. They have no legal grounds to demand financial support. You owe them nothing. And just like that, Caroline felt lighter. For years, she had lived in fear of disappointing her mother. But now, she felt nothing but disgust. Caroline never sent the money. She never responded to the threats. And within weeks, the truth became painfully clear to Judith and Walter. Caroline was gone. No more money, no more support, no more control. And without Caroline's financial help, the perfect life they had built on her back began to crumble. Ashley tried to salvage her influencer career, but the damage had been done. Brands refused to work with her. Her follower count plummeted. Walter tried to return to work, but no one was interested in hiring a man who had spent years living off his stepdaughter's income. And Judith? Judith had to face reality. She had pushed away the only child who had ever truly cared. One evening, a final message came through, from Walter. We lost the house. Judith won't admit it, but she regrets everything. Just thought you should know. Caroline stared at the message. Then, slowly, she deleted it. No response, no sympathy, just silence. Because for the first time in her life, Caroline was finally truly free.